The Bavarian forest in Germany. Tranquil, unspoilt, beautiful. A dream destination for countless tourists. But occasionally, the encounter with nature can become very personal. This stag survives, but not all are so lucky. Their bodies end up in the forest, alongside countless other dead animals. Because death strikes anytime, anywhere. So why don't we constantly trip over animal carcasses? What happens to a stag after its death? The Bavarian Forest National Park is a trailblazer in the science of death. Even though it's a constant companion, death and decay is relatively new research territory. Cadaver ecologist Christian von Hermann wants to know what happens after death.
I've been interested in it since I was a kid. Whenever I saw something dead, like a blackbird or a mouse, I would turn it over to see what was going on. To me, it's really helpful to understand things. It makes them less disgusting or abstruse. If you can explain them. I always say everyone ought to spend time thinking about this. After all, our future will end in death. In this case, the focus is on what happens after death in the wild. The body of a doe has been selected to pay a last service to science. Christian von Hermann and his team are looking for a quiet spot where they can observe who pays a visit to her carcass. Are you okay? Or should we slow down a little? That's a horsefly.
I had one on my back yesterday.
They're also around when it kicks off.
Get away! We don't need you here.
Look, the flies have also disappeared. This looks good. Over there in the dip. Put the head over there.
So, looks like the tree coverage is quite good.
Right, let's take the sledge back with us. For now, the doe is left to the forest. The observation of her decay has begun. There are some astonishing facts. A 30-kilo carcass equates to around 100 years of agricultural fertilization. Those are huge numbers. So when you take everything out of the forest, this whole nutrient input just gets lost. So this 80-kilo doe is something of a gold mine for the forest, and it doesn't stay unnoticed for long. The first visitors had already followed the transport of the carcass. Blowflies. The doe indulges their every wish. It offers the perfect nursery for their babies, protected and with a bountiful food supply for the hungry mouths. Mother flies are extremely efficient. They don't bother to look after their young. They just lay their eggs and leave. Instead of parental care, they bet on sheer mass in order to procreate. Blowflies lay a lot of eggs, around 200 at a time. By the end of the first day, they've already placed tens of thousands of eggs around the mouth, nose, Eyes, rectum, and open wounds, the gateways to their larvae's new home. The huge mass of eggs and fly larvae are in turn an irresistible delicacy for others. Wasps patrol the carcass. They like to steal the freshly laid eggs, which are rich in protein and make for a welcome addition to the colony's larders. Wood ants also take their share. But the wasps want more than just eggs and dead flesh. They also have their eyes on the fly mothers. At this banquet of the beasts, some of the guests even devour one another. Within just a few hours, the dead body has become a center of pulsating life. The feast is in full swing. The doe's death provides a multitude of food and nutrients for a myriad of creatures. And in this way, her body is reintroduced into the ecosystem of the Bavarian forest. Exactly how this works is what fascinates the national park's scientists. They have created cadaver hotspots inside the conservation area. Carcasses are laid out in different situations and seasons, waiting for their natural visitors. Observed day and night by the biologists' camera traps. Analysis of the captured images shows a dead body quickly turns into a busy island of life, with a multitude of visitors. To gain detailed insights into the processes of decay, the scientists collect samples from the cadaver hotspots to be analyzed in the laboratory.
There's a bit of a smell already.
It smells like the maggots have arrived in numbers. It's exactly that sweet secretion. The researchers want to know how the organisms of decomposition operate, how they differ from one location to the next, and how they influence the local species diversity. This deer carcass has been here for a week. It really should be riddled with maggots, but there are hardly any to be seen. Yet there is plenty of activity. There's another one. There's quite a bit going on. The carrion beetles are out, and there are a few maggots. The scientists take samples from insect traps, which should give them an important indication of how the decay of this carcass is progressing, and who is responsible for it.
It's really important we conserve it immediately.
If you look into that cup, it's brimming with carrion beetles. The results of the lab analysis will be added to the great mosaic of results of the research project covering the entire Bavarian forest protected area. Right, so let's open up the snout. So there are lots of Thanatophilus. I've just seen a maggot in the third stage, so that means that lots have already left the carcass. But we'll see that when we lift the deer. Right, I'll lift it up. I'm really curious to see if the maggots really are underneath, because they often go to hide out in the dark. Yes, look, that's where they all are.
Yeah, I'll look.
The fly maggots have taken refuge from the dry summer weather and predators underneath the deer. Can you feel that with your hand? It's really warm, right?
It's really warm.
A thermal imaging camera shows all these small bodies rubbing against each other, combined with other decomposition processes, can produce temperatures of over 40 degrees Celsius. A hotspot, easy to detect, even from the air. The scientists have to assemble a complicated puzzle. The processes of decomposition are highly individual and differ from place to place, depending upon microclimate, weather, scavengers, and the environment. In the French city of Lille, Christian van Herman's international colleagues are working on a counterpart to the forest study, surrounded by concrete, glass, and bricks. Who lies in wait here to find their banquet? An old acquaintance, the blowfly. She doesn't miss a thing. The scent of death reaches her even through the tiniest cracks and shows her the way. In this case, she's been offered an exclusive menu, a pig carcass. It's supposed to simulate a dead body in an apartment and allows the forensic scientists to explore the time of death. Just as in the forest, flies are the first to arrive. Their priority? Egg laying. As many and as quickly as possible. Just 8 hours later, the first larvae are ready to hatch. Delicate and fragile creatures. Damian Charabidze and his German colleague Larissa Como document the different stages of insect colonization for forensic purposes.
You already sampled this one?
No.
Okay.
Fly maggots develop following a strict timetable dictated by environmental conditions. These parameters are important to accurately calculate a body's time of death.
So maybe different species, but I guess they are mixed species together. Okay, and they are the same species or different ones?
I'm not sure.
I see. No, we can't tell. We have to bring it back to the lab because it's not possible. We have to bring it back and identify the species.
Not only flies know how to exploit the goodness locked up in a carcass. Back in the Bavarian Forest National Park, a very peculiar specialist is on the prowl. A male burying beetle. Just like the flies, he smells the object of his desire over long distances and purposefully makes his way across the forest floor. The compass of his olfactory senses is highly reliable. He's found a dead mouse. But for him, this isn't just a dead mouse. It's a prospective cozy home for his future family. The treasure is assessed carefully. From tip to toe. From right and left. Above and below. He knows this find must be hidden before others get to it, because for burying beetles, a carcass like this is highly prized. It is to be a bridal gift for his future partner. At least, that's the plan. But he isn't the only one lured by the enticing mouse carcass. Other males have also discovered it. It triggers a mass brawl, beetle style. It's a free-for-all, no holds barred. They're fighting for their future, ready to give it everything they've got. Only the victor can start a family here, and that's every burying beetle's lifelong goal. They can track down the mouse's scent of death over many kilometers and pinpoint its location accurately. Their antenna can even detect individual scent molecules and follow their tracks. The rivals take no prisoners. Ripped off legs and severed antennae are all par for the course. It can be deadly. This time, the intruder has the upper hand. Now all he's missing is a partner in crime. Of course, death is not exclusive to animals. Plants die too, and in so doing provide important nutrients for other organisms. In the Bavarian Forest National Park, plants triggered the first research projects about death and decay as the basis of life. A devastating bout of tree dieback, caused by an invasion of bark beetles in the 1990s, laid waste to large parts of the forest. The resulting wilderness today serves as an outdoor scientific laboratory. The national park decided to set up dead wood zones where the forest was deliberately left to its own devices and observed in large-scale experiments. In contrast to most of our forests, they are not managed. Here, nature has been left to follow its own rules for decades. The mantra, let nature be nature. Since then, they've hosted cutting-edge research projects about dead wood that have triggered a change in forest science. Christian von Hermann's cadaver science is a new revolutionary addition to the park's research tradition in the footsteps of death. The National Park's director, Franz Leibel, views them as two sides of the same coin. The death and decay of plants is just as crucial for life in the forest as the death of animals.
Here you can really see the importance of dead wood in the national park's forests.
It reminds me of my cadavers. One needs the other.
In this case, it just happens to be plants.
Of course, this is more difficult. All the materials have to be unlocked. It's quicker with animals, but when you look closely, you can see that it's not all dead. That new life needs death.
You can clearly see a brown rot fungus over there. It's a fungus that grows on spruce, and it decays the cellulose first and leaves the lignin. That's why the dead tree takes on this red-brown coloring. They call it the brown rot, as opposed to the white rot.
It weighs hardly anything.
Yes, it's already rotten. This is material which is good for the forest floor, because it provides nutrients.
The forest depends on a myriad of little helpers that keep all that dead matter in check. But more than that, dead wood is the life source for a host of organisms, including more than 2,000 different types of fungi in the national park alone. Fungi are among the most important agents of decomposition worldwide. There are more than 5 million different species on Earth, 6 times more than plants. Many grow on dead wood and penetrate the trunks with root-like structures. we usually just see the fruiting bodies on the surface. It takes a while, but eventually these delicate fungal structures will make even these mighty tree wrecks disappear. And they're not alone. Animals too make use of dead trees. This bizarre insect is already at it. It's 4 centimeters long and has a strange appendage with a crucial function. A giant wood wasp. To her, dead wood means a safe home and food for her offspring. A weak point in the surface allows her to put her special tool to work, the long ovipositor, which she uses like a drill to penetrate the wood. She must drill almost 2 centimeters to provide a safe home for her kids. While laying her eggs, she also injects a kind of fungal secretion that decomposes the wood. So, when the larvae are ready to hatch a few weeks later, they're surrounded by pre-digested ready meals. They spend up to 5 years eating and recycling the wood surrounding them. Only then are the larvae ready to pupate and emerge from the dead tree as adult wood wasps. For the giant wood wasp, tidy, managed forests are dead forests. The Bavarian forest, by comparison, is a paradise. Where the forest is left to its own devices, she can complete her life cycle and go about her business, turning death into new life. Meanwhile, at the Forensic Institute in faraway Lille, Damian Cherubidze has found not only fly larvae on the dead pig.
Look, I found there are some new colonizers here.
Yes? Oh, larva beetles. That's cool. They're already there. Adults and larvae.
Totally another ecosystem.
To establish exactly which organisms have arrived and what life stages they've reached, the scientists take samples from the pig carcass for laboratory analysis. In the last few decades, observing the insect colonization of dead bodies has become a central part of criminal investigations into unsolved deaths. Under the microscope, Damian can distinguish between the different species. Larder beetle larvae are usually present at an advanced stage of decay, a clear indication that the carcass has been in situ for a while. But the details always depend on the surrounding conditions, especially the temperature. If you know what the environment is like, you can assess the developmental stages of larvae and pupae and work out an accurate decomposition timetable. Forensic scientists often make surprising discoveries during their observations. The scent of decay has also lured minuscule parasitic wasps. They're searching for fly pupae to penetrate the protective shell of the cocoon and inject their eggs. Damian opens countless fly cocoons during his investigations, a time-consuming task that requires a precise touch. And sometimes, instead of a fly, up to 8 pinhead-sized young wasps emerge. The fly, that as a maggot sustained itself with the dead pig's tissue, has become food for the young wasps, in effect recycling the pig's resources and handing them up the food chain. Damian Cherubidze's insights provide important methods for the determination of time of death, cause of death, and its circumstances. They're a crucial part of forensic investigations. The carrion beetles in the depths of the Bavarian forest also belong to nature's recycling troupe. The victorious male has conquered the dead mouse for himself, and doesn't waste time. A female must be found. To attract a lady, he pushes up his rear end and emits pheromones designed to lure a mate. A female tests the air with her antennae. Olfactory cues are the essence of long-distance communication for these beetles. She follows the scent cocktail all the way to the dead mouse, where her suitor awaits. Man and mouse are to her liking. The beetles mate up to 170 times. Their romance continues until their kids are born, that is, when their larvae have hatched. For now, the pair is extremely busy. The mouse has to be buried quickly to hide it from rivals. It's tough. The beetles coordinate their efforts carefully, also using sounds. They dig under the mouse. It's a load many times their own weight. It sinks further and further into the ground. Until it disappears altogether. Elsewhere, there is a commotion on the forest floor. Wood ants are tireless selectors and clean-up workers, a bit like nature's rubbish collectors. They collect pieces of wood to construct nests, seeds for their larders, eggs as food for their young. Millions of ants working together in a single colony. Even mouse carcasses are not deemed too big, although they pose a heavy challenge for the tiny workers. Flies and their eggs are not tolerated on the treasure. These ants are incredibly strong for their size. They can lift 50 times their own weight. But an entire mouse must first be dissected. And because that takes many hours, the carcass must be protected from other contenders. Intruders are driven off mercilessly, like this unlucky dung beetle. It's a large-scale operation under serious time pressure before a bigger and stronger scavenger might steal their food, like a fox or a magpie, for example. While the mouse detachment continues to wrestle with the carcass, other workers collect more manageable treasures. A beetle is one of the many that are dragged back to the colony for recycling. It's no surprise that we hardly ever come across dead bodies in the forest. Sometimes the scientists at the national park have to aim high to stay on the track of death. Up here, more than 20 meters above the ground, there also seem to be creatures in pursuit of dead bodies. They circle high above the treetops, their senses locked on death. The National Park's researchers have mounted a trap on the tower, hoping to catch a few of the flying scavengers and identify them.
20 meters up is something that carrion beetles ought to manage, and that's why we want to try out this light trap. The beetles ascend in these circles, and they're clumsy flyers. They're very scent-oriented, crash into these light tubes, and fall straight into this funnel. So we have a mouse at the bottom right now, so that should attract them, and dusk is an ideal time for burying beetles because that's when they like to bury carcasses. When something dies, like a little shrew for example, and you might see it on the cycling path one day, but it's gone the next, that's down to burying beetles that pick up the little mouse and bury it. It's already quite smelly.
Over what sort of distances can they detect the scent of decay?
Around 3 kilometers, which is an incredible achievement. They can detect oligosulfides in the pictogram range. That's sulfur chains that they can smell well, and they are generated by the mouse fur.
Right, Christian. Since we've been watching this bucket for the last 2 hours, perhaps we can call it a night.
That's science. Hours and hours.
Did something just fly in?
After several hours on the watch, this may seem like meager pickings, but the capture clearly shows, like vultures, carrion beetles do make their rounds high above the treetops. And with a bit of luck, the scientist will find a few more beetles in their trap in the morning. This bird's eye view shows clearly just how hard it is to make out a dead animal in the forest. So here, it makes a lot of sense for carrion beetles to follow their sense of smell. And they are really good at it. The doe left out by the scientists has changed dramatically over the last 2 weeks. She's turned into a beetle paradise. Including some surprising visitors. A ladybird picks its way across the dense fur, even though it isn't interested in dead flesh. Unlike specialists like the carrion beetles that feed on the carcass itself. Just like flies, they also come here to mate and lay their eggs. When their larvae hatch, they can feed on the rich banquet to grow big and strong. The ladybird is just a passing visitor. It's looking for salts and minerals, mites and fungi that can also be found on a carcass like this. But it doesn't seem at ease amongst this commotion. While the ladybird forages in a hurry, the carrion beetles are on the hunt for fly maggots. Hungry wasps circle above the beetles. The insects have conquered the carcass. No one is safe at this feast. These diners have tracked down their feast over many kilometers. And many will also die here. A never-ending cycle. Just one single dead body attracts thousands of other organisms that in time contribute to recycling it completely. But what happens when a lot of animals die at the same time? It's the subject of an extraordinary study in the USA. In 2016, Mississippi State University scientists put out 3 tons of pig carcasses, rigged with camera traps that captured how countless organisms arrived, from vultures to coyotes and, of course, flies. Every single one of their maggots consumed around 2 grams of the carcasses. Now they're ready to pupate. Millions of fly larvae are on the lookout for a suitable hideaway at the same time. An event also known as a maggot carpet. In this case, 10 centimeters thick and several meters long. Within just 1 week, the majority of the carcasses were consumed and transferred into the surroundings. In that way, the scavengers provide an important service to their ecosystem. They reduce the amount of liquids draining into the ground from the dead bodies. The soil is not prepared for this overdose of nutrients. It turns into an ecological desert that can take years to recover. By contrast, the research projects in the Bavarian forest are looking at single cadaver hotspots. Eric Benbow of Michigan State University visits Christian van Herman's team. The research on the ecology of death is still relatively new, so international colleagues like these like to exchange their experiences.
But this doesn't look like it's been scavenged by something larger.
Yeah, you're right, it's interesting.
And do you get avian scavengers like we find in
normally we
North
have a lot of common ravens also.
Mm-hmm. But none here because the eye was still intact, right?
No.
And so it's curious that there hasn't been any vertebrate scavenging or avian scavenging.
But I think this makes this decomposition so interesting, this variation.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we have a lot of blowfly activity here, some beetle activity. We saw some of the larval maggot mass. I say we try to lift up and see what's under there. I bet there's a large community of some of these flies.
Is it possible, Kai? There's also apparently.
Oh, there's bearing beetles. Oh, yeah.
Very nice. Yeah.
And additional sylphids.
Necrophus.
Yeah, Necrophus.
Vespuloides. Yeah.
Not as many as I expected, but you can see several in there. And the wasps are going crazy, trying to find the early life stages of the blowfly larvae and eggs. Look at this one. Which one is this? Woo!
This is also Necrophorus humato.
Humato?
It's more bigger than Vespuloides.
So I suspect the abdomen is filled with maggots. Like in a study we had in the United States where the entire pig carcass was converted into writhing mass of maggots. And the entire group of them moved 25 meters. 25 meters into the forest and then dispersed in radial dispersion. Much like a maggot mass here would often, as they grow and they mature, they go into soil, into mosses, to find places that are protected from predators. And so we have to think about how the nutrients and energy are being converted by the flies and the other insects and then distributed into the ecosystem. And what we suspect are the genomes of microbes that are inherently part of these carcasses, which is exciting stuff. So the research you're doing is amazing.
The research projects in the Bavarian Forest National Park are international trailblazers in their field. Just like Eric Benbow's own projects in Michigan, where he studies what happens to a habitat when more nutrients are suddenly available from animal carcasses. This study is about salmon. They were introduced into the Great Lakes in the 1960s and did very well. Since then, the adult fish make their annual migration to their spawning grounds upriver, where they also die. But what consequences does that have for an environment where there were previously no salmon? Eric Benbow and his colleague Ray McNeish want to find out how the many dead fish left after spawning impact the ecosystem and soil microbes. After all, the salmon's bodies transport nutrients from the lake many kilometers upstream. And not only that, the researchers suspect that they also carry environmentally damaging substances, such as heavy metals, and microplastics.
So you can see that the eyes are gone, right?
And all of this is discoloration, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Over a week ago, the biologists laid out salmon carcasses on the banks of the Platte River. And now they are back to take samples for analysis in the laboratory.
Okay.
Okay, so this is 5F female, 5F male, female male.
Yep.
Okay.
And for the first one, we're just going to do one swab here for just the microbes.
Okay.
And then on the male, we'll do 2 swabs for microbes and microplastics.
Okay.
So we get into the mouth, because it's kind of an enclosed cavity. All over the gills, lots of microbes in there. Okay.
A bout of cold weather has slowed the decomposition of the fish, and the flies could not get to work as expected. But there are signs that other animals have paid them a visit.
Wow. This one's been moved quite a bit.
For the lab analyses, soil samples are taken from beneath the fish carcasses.
Ooh, it's slippery.
Yes, it is.
I got it.
Oh, yeah. That's a ripe one. Woo. Oh, there's some good goo.
Oh, yeah. Success.
Success.
I'll take this and put my gloves around it. I got
Okay.
fish goop all over.
Nearby, there are signs that a fish scavenger has recently been at work. Perhaps a bear?
Hey, Ray, look at this. That's a fresh one. Just this morning, I bet.
I don't know. It's not really easy to see any teeth marks, like where it's like been separated from the rest of the body.
No.
Kind of more like bitten and torn.
Yeah.
Right, you would say?
It's definitely fresh, though. Look at the eye is clear, so it hasn't been decomposing for very long, and the skin looks pretty fresh.
Yeah.
And I bet there's a body somewhere. Maybe a bear took out the brains.
It's not unlikely. After all, bears are known salmon lovers. Back in the lab, the fish are examined. Do they also carry harmful substances? And are these absorbed by bears and other scavengers and passed on into the wild food chain?
All I do is read numbers.
The scientists are looking for plastics in particular.
60 total. 60. 65.
Microplastics is a hot topic. Ray McNeish has already found sizable residues in other aquatic organisms.
Ah, there we go. Got it.
The salmon could be unwitting carriers and distributors of microplastics and other pollutants.
That is a lot of eggs.
Is the untouched wilderness of Michigan at risk of being accidentally polluted? To find out, the researchers focus on the digestive organs.
The big liver.
It is a big liver. I gotta be really careful here. There you go.
They expect to find that microplastics collect in the intestines, remnants of the rubbish generated by human communities and dumped into the Great Lakes. When the salmon migrate upriver, they take their artificial contents with them and deposit them in the wilderness, even in places that are on the surface untouched by civilization. And when pollutants enter the food chain through the process of decay, the perpetual cycle of nature will keep them in the system. The biologists want to know what this means for nature. Much decomposition takes place in secret. The burying beetles in the Bavarian forest have hidden their mouse. Now the homely nest is prepared for their offspring. Fly maggots are not tolerated on their patch. The home is to stay fresh and clean. No lodgers allowed. The beetles remove the hair from the mouse carcass and smear an antimicrobial secretion on it to keep the meat fresh and suppress the scent of decay. While the parents are busy making their nest, the eggs develop where the mother laid them, a short distance from the mouse carcass. It takes around 5 days for the little larvae to hatch. They immediately make their way to the parental nest, following scent trails that guide them safely to their destination. The mouse carcass will now be their home for about a week. In the nest, the larvae snuggle together and wait for their parents. They have conserved the mouse meat by replacing the microbiome typical for carrion with yeast fungi from their own intestines. These suppress decay and its toxic byproducts. Burying beetles are attentive parents. They look after, protect, and feed their offspring until they're ready to pupate. The larvae beg for food by stroking their mother's mouthparts with their little legs. The reward is pre-digested mouse meat. It's reminiscent of a bird's nest full of young chicks that are constantly fed by their parents. Looking after offspring is extremely rare among insects, and the dead mouse is essential for the carrion beetle's strategy, serving as protective nest and food at the same time. In Lille, Demian Cherubidze's research project has also turned into a nursery. In forensic science, fly maggots are among the most important study subjects, since other forensic methods fail to be accurate just 72 hours after death. The maggots are extremely efficient. They don't even have to stop feeding in order to draw breath. They breathe through their rear end, while the mouths continue to drill into the body like feeding machines. The scientists measure and observe every detail. That's how they could demonstrate how flies and their maggots optimize their survival chances and adjust their reproductive cycle to the local conditions. While stocks last, the flies continue to lay eggs. Knowing how and under what conditions the maggots develop allows the researchers to make increasingly accurate assessments for criminal investigations. The fact that larder beetles are already at the carcass is a surprise for the forensic scientists. They usually come later, since they prefer dry food. A further detail in the forensic science puzzle. The fly maggots need between 3.5 and 14 days before they're ready to pupate. The warmer it is, the faster the process. And when you know the temperature, the larval stages show exactly how long a body has already been dead in this location. But it's also important to remember that the maggots themselves generate heat. It's complex. Many factors are crucial in determining the time of death through the process of decomposition. For the scientists, a time lapse is like an hourglass of death. It shows how the maggot mass emerges in waves and helps to work out the developmental cycle. The experiment in Lille also documents where the fly maggots pupate. It's crucial for the forensic team to know where to search, and only then can they draw reliable conclusions regarding the time of death. The decomposition experiment in Lille concludes within a few weeks. But in the Bavarian forest, some carcasses are observed over the course of many months, until nothing is left at all. It shows why the research of cadaver ecologists is so important. Death and its recycling processes are the first link in a long chain of life.
In 5 days, 10 days, 12 days, you essentially have something that was living and breathing, becoming part of the soils. And and the organs being transformed into new life in many ways. And so carrion hasn't gotten studied well. I think there's some philosophy reasons, but when you start studying it, you see how important it could be to the ecosystems. That's what the group here is trying to do as well.
You may not see the cadavers, but even if you don't, every animal dies at some point. All living things die and are transformed into a cadaver. You don't see them because they're recycled. They're reused, amongst others by insects. And that's how they become part of the ecosystem again.
If we don't have the insights, we might quickly conclude that this is something disgusting that needs to be removed. But the detailed observation is important. How much nitrogen gets into the soil? How important is the carcass for the ecosystem? How many insects need the carcass that might otherwise not be there at all? You have to imagine it like this. There are limited amounts of materials and resources on Earth that make up all life. All of it, without exception. No new resources are added. Everything alive today is made up of materials that were once part of something else. There is no life without death. Perhaps just like the scientists, we should see the helpers of death in a new light, not as disgusting and unwanted, but as the ultimate pioneers of life that enable our own existence and future lives.